where we could be alone between city lights. We don't have to hide. I wanna go, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? I can't understand why we can't hold hands, but they don't know what we have is real love. Aren't you sick and tired of having to hide? I know a place, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow?
What's up, guys? I'm Joshua Bardwell. You are gonna learn something today. How's it going, guys? Welcome to Monday Night Q&A live stream. How's it sounding out there? Sounds good to me. Ooh, got a little echo. Love hearing my own voice in my ear. That doesn't sound right. Thank you guys so much for being here. We're going to do some questions. You're going to ask questions. I'm going to answer questions. That's pretty much how this goes. Hello, chat. Hello, Dave Lockwood. Hello, Satori FPV. Bad Habit RC. I see you guys out there. Bjorn. Decode. Audio sounds good. Sound is great. The music is Do You Want to Follow? You could have guessed that part. By Velveteen. And that comes from Epidemic Sound, which is the company. I have a subscription with them. It's basically like you pay them $15 a month and you get all this music that you've never heard on the radio because it's not actually pop music. It's made for their library, but then you can use it without getting a copyright strike. Some of it's pretty good. People are like, who is that artist? It's just some band that makes music for Epidemic Sound. Chris W. I see you there, Chris W. Chris W. So, before we get into the Q&A, we're just going to give the stream a chance to trickle in, get started. And I like to start the stream with a little bit of just sort of news and talk, and then we'll get into the questions. And I want to start the stream by just saying to anybody who is in Florida, get out of there. Get out of there. Don't be in Florida right now. Sorry, Florida, you're boned. Take care. No, seriously, take care. Be safe. Batten down the hatches. Evacuate. Do whatever you got to do. You guys are. To all of you in the Bahamas. Anyway, what's in the mason jar? We got a good old gin and tonic today. Gin and tonic or lemonade. Parents, tell your kids it's lemonade. um, so here are a couple things that I want to share with you guys before we get into the Q&A. And the first one is one of these. I love simple things that are awesome in their own way, and this is one of them. This is the diatone soldering practice. Can I not get a bigger picture of it for real? I have one right here on my. Hang on. I have one right here. I saw this. Like, you know, some of my favorite things in the hobby are like the Newbie Drone goggle foam. Not this new motor or anything, but just like the Newbie Drone goggle foam. Just a simple thing that works really well. This is the diatone soldering practice board, and it's just a PCB with a bunch of pads on it, but they're the kind of pads that you're going to experience when you solder up a flight controller. It costs $2. Go back to this page. It costs $2. You can get it from Race Day Quads. You can get it other places. Race Day Quads sent me a couple of them. I'm going to make a video about them, but I just wanted to share with you guys that this exists, because this is a great way, especially if you're getting into like your first build, maybe to start practicing up without burning up your real flight controller. And Race Day Quads even shipped it with a little bit of solder on it. So that's pretty cool. That's very nice. Okay, next thing I want to talk to you guys about. Do you guys know anything about Panda RC? So I get messages all the time from companies who are like, you know, will you review our product? And a lot of times, if I've never even heard of this company, I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. But Panda RC hit me up and said, will you review our video transmitters? And I'm like, I've never heard of this company. Who is this company? But I went and looked, and $15? $15 is a pretty insane price for this feature set. Like, if $15 for this one, if you prefer this style, if you don't like the 36mm style, $18 for this one. I don't know what the difference is between these two, but like, do you guys, I want to throw it to the chat here, and you guys let me know if are these just like total garbage? Because if they're $15, like, you got to wonder, right? Or are they solid? If you've used them and they've worked great, I don't want to, like, I mean, I'll test the ones they sent me some. I'll test the ones that they sent me, and I'll be like, oh, they seem okay, or they don't. But that's just one, right? So if they're any good, let me know in the chat. If you had problems with them, let me know in the chat. I'll keep an eye on it. I won't respond to every single chat, but I would love to, you know, sort of poll the crowd, get your feedback. Frankly, guys, for $15 is probably worth a punt. But Mr. Tux wants to know, what's your opinion on AKK video transmitters? AKK makes great video transmitters for the price. They generally hit their rated output power, not on every channel, and have good feature set and good price and okay reliability. They're a little bit big, like they're not the tiniest ones, but I think these Panda RCs are coming in even cheaper than AKKs. Here's what I want to know though, like this looks a lot like a Rush tank, doesn't it? It looks a lot like a Rush. No, stop going to that tab. I don't want to show that tab yet. This looks a lot like a Rush tank VTX. Not the same. I don't think it's a Rush tank, but it does kind of make me wonder, are these like made by some other company whose name I would recognize? Because the Chinese companies are always changing names and starting new companies. Anyway, Panda RC, perhaps I'll be reviewing that. Let me know what you guys think. For $14, it kind of feels like it might be worth a punt. Exactly, that's what you're saying. So, okay. Wanted to throw that out there. Next thing that I want to throw out there, not that. You guys, you ever think, you know what Betaflight needs is more sliders? Did you ever think that? No, you didn't. But Betaflight, here's the thing that is possibly coming to Betaflight. I'm pretty excited about it. Look at this. This is a proposal by a person to add sliders to the Betaflight PIDs, because it turns out that the absolute value of the PID matters, but the ratio of the PIDs matters almost more. So, for example, the P to D ratio, when you have the right P to D ratio, you can change the actual P and D value and get different flight characteristics, but like you won't get P-term oscillations or D-term oscillations. And so this is a proposal to add these sliders like PD balance, so you could shift these things in a sort of methodical way that reflects how they actually are adjusted, rather than just randomly trying numbers. This is pretty interesting. The thing that makes me the most excited, though, is these filter sliders, because When you tell somebody, hey, you don't have enough filtering, you need more filtering to fix your hot motors. Well, what do you change? Do you change there's too many things. With the ability to just have a slider that takes the filters from more to default to less, very, very exciting. I hope that this gets put into Betaflight 4.1. I'm pretty excited to see that kind of thing. On the other hand, though, it is just going to add more freaking things to tweak and things to confuse beginners. But there you go. That is not, by the way, that is not current, in case there's any confusion in the chat, that is not currently in Betaflight. This is a proposal for a new thing that might be in Betaflight 4.1. Tonsuke Koma wants to know, do you have a plan to review the Sky 030? I do. I have them on the way from Sky Zone. I will be reviewing them. Jakey D says, Panda's been out for years. I know Panda RC has been out for years. Have they been making video transmitters for years, and I just have never heard of them? Okay. Okay, so, a little bit of info there. Generally, Kebab FPV uses them in the quads. Interesting. Even if they're garbage, it's worth the review. The problem, MC's Creations, is if they are garbage and I review them, then people buy them, and then they're garbage, people will blame me. And, you know, I try to, I don't know. I feel bad when somebody says, somebody reached out to me and said, I bought the FreeSky X-Lite Pro based on your review, and he had some problems with it. He was like, I will never trust you again. Like, literally, this is what he said in the email. He said, I will never trust you again. And I'm like, whoa, dude. First of all, did you go back to FreeSky or whoever you bought it from and tell him I mean, you got a dud, probably. Did you get a replacement? Did you tell him you had a problem? But you're literally like the first person ever to complain about the X-Lite to me. So, I mean, whatever. You can't win them all, I guess. All right. So here's the deal, guys. Here's the deal. What's the deal with live streams? Here's the deal. This is what I'm looking at on my screen in case you're new here. And by the way, if you are new here, welcome. Say hello in the chat. Say hello if it's your first live stream. Welcome. These are your questions. Your questions are coming by, and I will be answering them as fast as I can. I answer as many of them as I can, but they go by so freaking fast that I can't answer them all. See, look, I'm already seeing exciting questions that I'm missing because I'm talking about something else. But if you want to make absolutely sure your question gets flagged for my attention, hit the $ right here that shows pulls it out in a super chat. You can give a couple bucks or more, or Norwegian kroners if you prefer. Kroner. Now make sure I get your questions if you pull it out in the super chat. That'll definitely get my attention. And hello, Decode. It's not your first live stream. Give me a break. And over here on the left are my patrons. Hello, patrons. Hello, Trevor, Chamer, Mike, Alexa. Mike, Alexa finally joined my Patreon. Thank God. I've been waiting for Mike to join up for so long now. And if you want to join my Discord server, you can do that by joining my Patreon, which is down in the video description. Link down there. That's how you get the Discord invite. But whatever. So let's start with some of the questions. And one of the questions is from DFPV in the chat. What happened to your Beast class? I do still have my Beast class. In fact, I'm not going to pick it up for you because it's freaking huge, but it's right down there. I have a set of RC and Power motors that I'm going to be putting on it, swapping out the Polar motors that I have now. I am just chasing Catalyst Machine Works around the mulberry bush with gear. They're like, oh no, those aren't the best motors anymore. So I'm going to put some new motors on, and I'm going to try some new Gem Fan props that are supposed to be particularly designed for Beast class. The what am I using right now? Master Air Screw props are really designed for planes. And I'm hoping that this will help fix some of the issues I had when I was trying to tune it. When in doubt, just throw a whole new set of motors on your quad, right? Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Anyway, I hope that helps it fix it. And I want to get to that soon because RC and Power sent me a set of motors. And they're like $100 motors. So they kind of sent me $400 worth of motors. So I kind of ought to get a video out about it sometime soon. But anyway. Let's see here. What do we got? Am I excited? Quick Flash wants to know, am I excited about Emu Flight coming out? I am excited about that. In case you don't know what Emu Flight is, because there aren't enough flights Yeah, Emu Flight is, here's the deal. Let me give you the background. You remember Helio flight controllers, Helio Spring, and Butterflight? Well, Helio was a flight controller that had some special filtering code that ran in a dedicated coprocessor. You could only run the Helio code on the Helio flight controller. And some people felt that code was like made the quads fly really, really good. Some people really liked it. And Helio went out of business for reasons. And nobody makes, I think somebody is still making Helio compatible flight controllers. But it turns out it doesn't matter because these Emu Flight guys, they took the Helio filtering code. When Helio went out of business, they open sourced their code. So anybody could look at it. And these guys have ported the Helio code over to just basically Betaflight. So I think it's actually Butterflight right now. But basically what this means is that anybody who has a Betaflight or Butterflight compatible flight controller can try this code and use the Helio filtering. It's exciting. Last I heard, I was actually going to do an interview with these guys, and they said, well, we want to wait because they ported the Helio code to Butterflight, and they felt like they would get, this is not a direct quote, but it's my recollection of the conversations. Take it with a grain of salt. I think they felt like they would have a better user base if they ported it to Betaflight, but they were having some issues porting it to Betaflight because Betaflight is a lot more, I don't know, different. Betaflight, I think what they said was Betaflight has a lot of dynamic stuff in the PIDs, and it wasn't working as well. The dynamic P, the dynamic low pass, whereas Butterflight, well, kind of the whole point of Butterflight was not to do that garbage. So Emu Flight, pretty cool. If you have a Betaflight-based flight controller, you can just try it right now. You can just go to this GitHub and download the Emu Flight configurator and flash it and try it out and see what you think. And I'm looking forward to doing more content on that when the Emu Flight devs say, now is the time, pull the trigger, do the big push. So it should be pretty exciting. Let's see here. Monty Peak says, hey, Joshua, do you know where to get some 3D props? Yeah, I've been getting a lot of questions about 3D. People must have watched the Rotor Riot episode from this morning where Zoe FPV and, what's his name? Cricket. Cricket FPV went out and she taught Cricket how to fly 3D. And I got to say, Cricket took to 3D flying surprisingly quickly. And Zoe Zoe is a really good pilot, but Cricket learns fast. She's going to have some competition. If Cricket gets serious, here's what happens with 3D most of the time. People try 3D, and then they go, oh, it was fun, and then they forget all about it. They go back to doing what they do. So if Cricket does that, then everything will be fine. But if he gets serious about 3D, the same way that Cricket has kind of pushed the bounds of traditional FPV tricks with his backward stuff, he's going to shake up 3D, and Zoe better up her game. But I think we all benefit from competition like that. I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. Yeah, Jesse Talaferro, Cricket was doing new tricks, but he wasn't doing new tricks in 3D. See, Zoe is an excellent, excellent pilot. I think we do Zoe a disservice if we say Zoe is the best 3D pilot in FPV. She's a damn good pilot, even if you take 3D out of the equation. But let me tell you a little story. When I was a kid, like 13 years old, I won a roller skating competition. Yeah, I used to do figure skating. Somewhere in my house, there's a picture of me receiving the award, and I won the Southeastern Regional. The Southeastern Regional, we won, me and my partner, for the whole Southeastern region. Now, here's the thing: we weren't very good. There was just no one else in our age range. There was no one else in the age range we were in, so we won by default. My point is, to say someone is the best 3D pilot, well, if there's no other 3D pilots out there, then what does that even say? I've backed myself into a corner here because I put the disclaimer on the beginning of the conversation to say Zoe is a great pilot, period. And we do her a disservice to say she's a great 3D pilot as if she's not just a great pilot, period. See, I've come back out of the corner now. My point is, if Cricket starts working 3D and pushing the 3D envelope as hard as he pushes the envelope the rest of the time, Zoe's going to have to work hard to stay the best 3D pilot. That's my point. Hello, Robert N. Welcome to the live stream, new guy. Hello, Robert N. Somebody's going to cut out just the middle of that and show it to Zoe and go, Bardwell is dogging on you. Not at all. Not at all. The question, though, was 3D props. I think that Zoe orders her 3D props like from Alibaba. We were trying to get 3D props to shoot that Rotor Ride episode. Zoe had like 3 sets of props with her. She doesn't crash very often. I don't know, because she has 3D. She goes upside down. And we're having trouble ordering them. Let me ask her. I'm going to ask her in chat where she gets her 3D props from, and when she answers me, I'll put that. I'll let you guys know. So, it is not moonshine, Guillermo. It is good old gin and tonic. Good gin and tonic. Dave Lockwood, I have no shame about the figure skating. When I was a kid, one of my first jobs was working at a roller rink and giving out the skates when people rented skates and taking the skates back. And I skated on Friday nights, at the roller rink with all my friends. And then on Saturday mornings, I did figure skating. Not ice skating like all the cool kids, but roller skating, which no one had heard of. So you go, yeah, I'm a 13-year-old boy and I figure skate. People are like, really? You mean like in the Olympics? And you're like, no, those are on wheels. You mean like roller skates? Like, yeah. You mean like roller blades? No. Hey, I did get to touch a girl. That was nice. Because, you're side by side and you're like... I have no shame about that, though. I'm proud. Hey, Leonidas GFX, you don't know... First of all, it's a 2-hour live stream, okay? I got to stay hydrated. And second of all, you don't know how much gin is in this. I try to pace myself. Tyler Popplewell wants to know if the Immersion RC Rapid Fire module will work on the FlySight FG01. I bet you it will, Tyler, but I can't confirm that for sure. I know one guy locally. Who has a FlySight. I'm going to ask him if he's ever used Rapid Fire on it. But I would bet you it would. It's just the freaking Fat Shark goggles that need that stupid power mod. Hold on, he's answering me right now. I bet he hasn't used it. We'll find out though. See, Saber FPV is a pro figure skater. So he says he uses True DX, which also requires a power mod on the Fat Sharks. And he says it doesn't have an issue. So I bet you Rapid Fire would work on them. Guillermo says, Burning Man, figure skating, can load a pig into a truck with one hand. The many mysteries of Joshua Bardwell. That's true. I am the most interesting man in the world. Boots FPV, don't be a hater. Roller skating's what we did when we were young, not sit on our ass playing video games. Times change. Let's see here. The patron chat. Oh, Mike Alexa hates gin. The patron chat. What the patrons always do is they just chat amongst themselves and they never ask me questions. So then I ignore the patrons all through the whole live stream. And then they don't get their money's worth. License to Drive says, I bet Fat Shark or Relieved Skyzone didn't put a module socket on their Sky 030. I can't say anything more about that. That's all I have to say. I'll tell you this. Skyzone is aware that there are people out there who love the Sky 030, but are not using it because they love Rapid Fire more. And Skyzone is thinking about a solution for that situation. That's all I have to say. Rickster FPV in the Discord wants to know, thank you, Rickster, for being a patron. When are you testing the TBS Fusion? So TBS hasn't sent me one. I have a pre-order in to get one whenever TBS ships them, but I will not be able to review it. I will not be able to review it before they ship to customers because I am not in the special club of people who get early access to TBS products. You could take that how you will. So the thing is, when a vendor doesn't send me a product, I want to be like, that's because I'm too real. They don't trust all those other guys, Albert, Kim, UAV Futures. They got that product because the vendor knew they wouldn't tell the truth. But then when a vendor does send me a product, I'm like, oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Don't worry. I'll be honest about it. And then, so I don't know. I can't really honestly say either of those things. I treat all products the same. If somebody sends me an early product, the only thing they might get is I might complain to them instead of to the public. That's the thing. Ace FPV wants to know what would be the best combination of antennas for non-diversity goggles. Ace FPV, with non-diversity, you don't have a lot of choice, do you? You only have one antenna. So if you're flying in front of yourself, use an antenna. I like the TrueRC X Air because it has about 180-degree flight beam. If you're directly in front of yourself, you'll get about 10 dB of gain. Even to the side, you'll get a few extra dB of gain. If you're flying all around yourself, you'll need an Omni. Jeffro FPV in the regular chat says, why buy a Fusion when Trappy says it's almost as good as Rapid Fire? In fact, Jeffro FPV Trappy said in one of his live streams that, Fusion might be better, Rapid Fire might be better. I do think it's telling, given how much TBS hypes their products most of the time, that they're like hedging their bets. They're like, the Fusion's pretty good, the Rapid Fire's pretty good. When has TBS ever said that one of their products was about as good as anything else? But be that as it may, why buy the Fusion? The Fusion is supposed to have these extra features, like it'll communicate with your Unify through Crossfire, so that when you change channel on your goggles, your Unify will change channels to match. That's pretty freaking cool. Like, it'll communicate with Crossfire to like put OSD information in your goggles instead of, So there are going to be integration aspects of the Fusion that make it worth looking at, even if it's not the absolute best from the perspective of RF performance, which I think is an incredibly smart move on TBS's part. It's very hard to beat Rapid Fire at its own game. Rapid Fire is very, very freaking good. So maybe don't. Maybe you're 90% as good as Rapid Fire, but you have this integration with Crossfire and the Unify, and people will go, oh, that's worth it. I'll take that any day. Let's see here. Let's see. PT Custom says, looking to get a pair of premium goggles. Would you recommend the HDOs with Rapid Fire or wait for the Orcas? That's tough, PT Custom. How long will you have to wait? Because if you didn't get in on the Kickstarter, you're a few months out from getting goggles. I can't wait to get a set of Orcas when they finally ship and really be able to look at the final production. If the Orcas live up to their promise, they're going to look pretty freaking good. And maybe they'll look better than HDOs. They'll certainly will have a bigger and higher resolution screen. Whether they'll have a better image quality remains to be seen. You won't go wrong with HDOs with Rapid Fire today. Like, you might, 6 months from now, you might go, ooh, I wish I'd bought Orcas. They're better. But you're not going to be like, oh my God, these HDOs suck. No one's going to be, I don't think anybody will really feel that way. That's tough. Rain FPV wants to know, what will happen to Hype Train blasters after the replacement program ends? That's a good question, Rain FPV. I don't know the answer. I brought that up this week. Last week I was in Orlando shooting episodes with Rotor Riot, and we were going to do a build. And Drew said, why don't you put some blasters on the build? And I was like, are we still promoting blasters? Because doesn't the replacement program end like in, I think it was October, and then it got extended to like January? But like, if it's a year of replacements, you're like, oh, that's good. If it's like 4 months of replacements, you're like, well, that's not as good. In fact, I said, shouldn't we like lower the price at this point? If they were $26 with a year of warranty and now there's only 4 months of warranty, shouldn't they be cheaper? He didn't. Anyway, I don't know what they're going to do, but as long as they have inventory, they want to sell the inventory. So either they'll drop the price or they'll come up with another sort of replacement window. I don't know though. It's a good question. I do see the super chats coming in, and I don't worry, super chats. I will get to you. I always like to try to start strong with some just regular chats, so nobody feels too neglected. There's a question. Enzo Pedrera. Joshua, I have a quad that reboots the camera in VTX every time I land. I do a flip or roll. I'm using the cam and VTX pads on the JBF4 V2. How can I fix it? Enzo, what's happening to you there is that the 9-volt regulator is browning out when the motors move quickly. There's enough voltage sag that the 9-volt regulator browns out. I'm sorry this is happening. It shouldn't be happening. The 9-volt regulator should be solid. I don't know what to tell you. If you have particularly big motors, maybe that has to do with it. But the fix is to move the camera and VTX power, the red wires, from 9-volt to VBAT. Use an ESC plus pad. Like just move it over to the nearby ESC plus pad. That will fix the brownout. And hopefully that's a good solution for you. Let's see here. Always have to. F Cole FPV says, "Hey Joshua, I have a strange problem with one of my race quads. I always have to pitch back. Sticks are centered. This is only happening on one quad. All others fly fine. Check that the channels are centered. You did that. You said the sticks are centered. F Cole FPV, you said the sticks are centered, but did you actually check in the receiver tab that the channels are centered? The channels need to be centered at 1500 in the Betaflight receiver tab. So my guess is that it's not. And that you'll use sub-trim in your transmitter to center the channel. That's what I would suggest. Lipper in the Discord. No, wait. All right, I'm going to get Lipper. I called your name, so I'm going to get your question, but then I'm going to get super chats. Thank you, super chats, for being patient. Lipper in the Discord says, "Can I get smart audio to work with a Unify Nano Pro 32 on Betaflight, or do I need to wait till Betaflight 4X supports Smart Audio 2.1? I think, Lipper, that you do need to wait till Betaflight supports Smart Audio 2.1. So the new Unifys, the Nano Pro 32 and the Evo, use an updated version of Smart Audio with a small change to the protocol that Betaflight doesn't support, and I don't know why it doesn't support it. Honestly, I don't, because this has been a known issue for a long freaking time. And TBS changed the protocol. And what I heard was that the Betaflight devs were a little annoyed because, like, they didn't get told that I don't know. I shouldn't speak for them, but I thought I heard that there was a little bit of, like, saltiness all around because of the way it was handled. But it's been so long now, I don't know why it hasn't been fixed. I'm sure there's a good reason, Betaflight devs. I'm not trying to dog on you. I'm sure there's a good reason, but, like, it's been a long time. But I think that Betaflight, I thought that, like, Betaflight, one of the 4.0 releases fixed it. Maybe not. 4.1 surely will fix it. Anyway, the point is, Lipper, that currently it doesn't work. So what you need to do if you have Crossfire receiver is connect the Unify Nano up to the Crossfire receiver and control the Unify through the Crossfire system instead of through the Betaflight system. Okay, super chat time. Super chat time, everybody. Bad Habit RC, and in case you're not, just as a reminder, those super chats, just hit that $, throw a couple bucks at me. I'll call your question out, and of course, it's a way you can support me doing this thing that I love doing anyway. But you got to pay the bills eventually, right? Bad Habit RC, thanks for $2. What's the difference between Rapid Fire V1 and V2? Bad Habit RC, do you mean Mode 1 and Mode 2, or do you are you talking about different, revisions of the hardware? Rapid Fire has continually undergone small improvements to the hardware. It's continually getting a little bit better. Whenever people ask Tony Cake about, I want a V1 or a V2, he's like, there have been 19 hardware revisions that I don't know what you're talking about. So don't sweat the hardware on Rapid Fire. You can't really dig into the differences like that. Bad Habit RC, if you actually meant Mode 1 and Mode 2, Mode 1 has all of the Rapid Fire unicorn magic. Sync reconstruction, frame combining. Mode 2 gets rid of sync reconstruction because some cameras, the sync pulses are not consistent enough and the Rapid Fire gets confused. Bubby FPV, thanks for $1. Marley Lepo, thanks for 20 Norwegian kroners. What's up, Marley? What's up? I got to say it right. Jonathan Nelson, thank you. Massive donation, $40. Thank you, Jonathan Nelson. I will do my best to answer your question, $40 worth. Why doesn't Flight 1 have a low battery warning on the Revolto SD and Falco X? Can't be that hard to program. Are they just too cool for that? Thanks for all the help through Discord, though. I really appreciate it. I don't know, Jonathan. If I mean, I'm sure that I always get the impression that Flight 1 is working very, very hard, but that they're always a little understaffed. I don't know how many programmers they have on staff, but I would bet you, because Flight 1 actually pays their programmers, whereas all the Betaflight devs work for free. I would bet you that they have fewer programmers than Betaflight devs who are just, it's like 18 guys doing it on their spare time. Not that the Betaflight guys don't work hard. It's just, since nobody actually has to pay a salary, there's no limit to the number of Betaflight devs who can work on the project, whereas Flight 1 has budgetary concerns. And I always get the impression that Flight 1 devs are working their asses off, but sometimes Flight 1 is missing certain features, and it feels like it just didn't make it high enough on the development checklist. And so this, how hard could it be to have a low voltage cutoff? I don't know, but they're working on other things, I guess, is the takeaway. Henry Brosh, thank you for $2. Motor 1 will only arm and spin when connected to USB. That is a tough one. What I think of in a situation like that, so there's two things that can happen when USB is plugged in. One is that if your 5-volt regulator is messed up, then when you plug USB in, your quad gets power. That's not what's happening here, because the ESCs work even when you don't have 5 volts. The ESCs get power from the battery directly. The other thing that can happen is that I've seen cases before where plugging in USB fixes a grounding issue. The ground that you get from the USB cable solves a signal issue. That's such an obscure thing. I think something else is going on here, Henry, that we're missing. What I like to do is I like to use turtle mode to test my motors because it's a little more reliable than arming, and the PID loop isn't active, so the quad won't flip out. What I would say, Henry, is try using turtle mode and see if you can get motor 1 to spin. But if it won't spin, then I would just be digging in, resoldering the signal wire, resoldering the power, and just checking, why won't it spin? I don't know why it'll spin from USB. I think that, here's what I think. What's really happening here is that the idle speed, that you're using one shot and the ESC isn't calibrated. So when you arm the quad, the motor doesn't start spinning, but then when you go to the motor slider, you can get it to spin. It just feels like there's something else going on there. Alex, thanks for $1. Oh, Alex is in the chat. My producer's name is Alex. No, that's just a joke. Pekka Johnson, thanks for €2. Thank you, Pekka. Dexter Johnson, thanks for $10. I lost my brand new quad I built over a lake. God, that sucks, dude. That sucks, dude. I feel for you, man. I started crying, literally. My camera I won from your event went out mid-air. Oh, no. I wired it up to 5 volts. It was the Starlight camera. Why would my quad's video... Then the question ends, but I'm guessing you're asking, why would my quad's video crap out? Dude, I don't know. If the camera crapped out, then the camera must have lost power, right? It was the 5 volt regulator. So if the camera went out, the flight controller probably would lose power too, because the flight controller is also powered off 5 volts. If the camera craps out like that, then the first place to start looking is at the wiring. I don't think it would be the voltage regulator, although without knowing, without high def video to tell us if the FC rebooted, it would be hard to know for sure. The short version, Dexter, is that since the quad is in the lake, if we have DVR, we might be able to do some analysis on whether the camera crapped out, the 5 volt regulator, or the VTX. But most likely it's a wiring issue. That's or damaged hardware. I mean, we just can't rule that out. I don't have a good answer for you, man. It really sucks that you lost your quad. I'm really sorry to hear that. Burger Lord asks, was there still OSD? That's the exact kind of questions we would need to ask to dig further into this. Things you can look at is if the screen goes to black, but you have OSD, that tells you the flight controller is still working, but the camera went out. If the screen goes to static, that tells you the video transmitter shut down. You can also listen in the high def if you have a GoPro. If you hear the ESCs go doo-doo-doot, well, you know the whole quad lost power. These are various ways of troubleshooting what exactly went down. But FPV was the one with the quad who is constantly pitching back. Channels are centered at 1500 and it's still happening. FPV, if the channels are centered at 1500, and verify this by looking in the receiver tab that the 3D model is not drifting. If the channels are 100% centered at 1500, or maybe within 2 milliseconds, then it's gotta be, yeah, I term on pitch being too low. It could be, but it'd have to be really low, dude. It'd have to be really low. You could try adding a little bit of deadband. Add a little bit of deadband. Sometimes the channels jitter a little bit, and that can cause things to move. Adding a little deadband will fix it. MBFPV in the Discord says, Willie, Schizo, and Preston are all coding for Falco X right now. Yeah, I was pretty sure at least those 3. I wasn't sure if there were more. I know Willie is one of the main devs for Flight 1, and I didn't know Schizo was still doing it, but that doesn't surprise me. Schizo was actually a professional developer before he became a professional pilot. I hear he's gone back to being a developer full-time. Extinction points out that, don't forget, oh yeah, nearly forgot this, if you're trying to get Smart Audio 2.1 to work with your Unify Nano or Pro 32, you can, where's the, show unstable releases. If you enable show unstable releases, you can pick the AKK RDQ VTX patch release. And that will actually work with Smart Audio 2.1. That's a great point, MBFP, Extinction. Thank you for reminding me that this exists. I kind of forgot that this existed because the AKK has fixed their firmware a long time ago, but that actually also fixes problems with Smart Audio 2.1. That is gold right there, my friend. Gold. JCS 8313, you are exactly right. If Dexter Johnson's quad went to static, either the VTX went out or the whole quad lost power, not the camera. So, for example, it could have just been that your XT60 came unplugged. I mean, it's possible. Rick in the Discord asks, does camera tilt in Betaflight do anything? Yes, it does, Rick. I have a video about camera up tilt compensation. So as you may know, when the quad is pitched forward and flying forward, in order to do kind of a flat turn, you have to push both yaw and roll in the direction of the turn. What camera up tilt compensation does is automatically inputs enough roll that when you just move yaw, the quad turns and the roll is sort of automatically compensated for. So basically, it makes it seem like you have less up tilt than you really do. This sounds like a good thing, but I'm not sure. I used it for a while, and I thought that it added, because it also, when you do snap rolls, it adds yaw. And I thought that it was hurting my roll authority because the quad has less authority on yaw than roll. And I thought that it was kind of messing up my snap rolls, and I ended up turning it off. The bottom line is that when I go to fly, I just sort of adjust to the amount of up tilt that I've got. If I was regularly flying at really high up tilt, 45 degrees or more, it might make sense to add a little bit of camera up tilt compensation and make the quad feel like instead of 50 degrees of up tilt, it feels like it has, 35. But I don't mess with that feature much anymore. Yeah. Nick Schwartz asks, did Immersion RC ever fix the Mobula 7 with rapid fire? Nick, I'm sure Immersion RC would ask, did Mobula ever fix their incompatible camera and VTX? Rapid fire works great when the camera and VTX are transmitting consistent sync pulses, and it is really the camera design and the flight controller designer's responsibility to make sure those sync pulses are consistent. The fact that we get away with inconsistent, out of spec signals on typical diversity receivers, it's easy to blame rapid fire for that. The bottom line is this: if you have a Mobula and your rapid fire is unable to maintain lock, just set the rapid fire to mode 2. You won't have that problem anymore. But it's like it's not rapid fire's fault that it can't do the full best performance unicorn magic when it's sort of garbage in, garbage out, right? App users, some Mobula 7 users have problems with rapid fire maintaining sync. You're not. You're lucky. It's a bit of a crapshoot. Is rapid fire worth it? Just flying a whoop? Asks Dougie FPV. Yeah, for sure. The worse the signal, rapid fire is particularly appropriate for tiny whoop users because tiny whoop users are always flying with weak signal indoors, lots of multipath. It's a mess. I think tiny whoop users benefit like the most from rapid fire, even though tiny whoops don't usually go very far. Let's see here. A couple more super chats coming in. Francesco Positron, thanks for €5. Vladimir Kovalenko, thanks for $20. Big donation. Thank you, Vladimir. Very generous of you. Thank you for all your help. What are the main differences between the Mr. Steel's Stout 1750 kV and the T-Motor F40 Pro V3? Are they more similar than different? So, Vladimir, I have to say I don't like have the specs of the Steel motor in front of me to tell you 100% for sure what the differences are, but I do know that Steel in general prefers a smoother, more linear, and weaker motor. So what Steel has preferred in the past is not like ultra powerful N52 SH magnets just like wah speed. He has gone for weaker, smoother motors. So I would guess that the Mr. Steel Stout 1750 motor is going to use weaker magnets, make less power at the top end, but have a more controllable and linear response curve with very, very smooth performance, like good bearing quality and so forth. Whereas the F40 Pro is more of just a all-out power motor. Not that the F40 Pro can't be smooth, but it certainly is going to have. I don't even know if it's going to be a less linear throttle curve, to be honest with you, but it's just by nature of the fact that the F40 makes more power, I think it might be a little harder to control, especially in a proximity situation. Pardon me. Miro in the Discord says he believes the Stout uses N52, the Silks run N48. Oh, I see. So the Stout may be more similar to the T-Motor F40 Pro than I thought. The Silks, the Steel Silk motors run N48 magnets to be weaker and smoother. The Stout uses higher powered magnets. So then what's the difference? I don't know about that. I mean, T-Motor make pretty good quality motors. I don't know about the Stouts. I don't know a lot about like how they're manufactured and so forth. I mean, there's going to be a lot of similarities there, just by nature of the fact that they're both 2306 motors. There's going to be a lot of similarities. Mr. Tuck says, just fly full throttle all the time, and then the throttle curve doesn't matter. That is an Alex Vanover approach. Let's see here. Ethan Mitchell, have you heard of or seen any durability issues with the DJI system? Ethan Mitchell, the DJI system is still relatively new. I know for a fact Drib broke a lens on his and replaced the lens with an aftermarket lens, just a standard, 2.1 millimeter lens that he found one that worked. As far as like the air unit crapping out, I haven't heard of any of those. Someday somebody's going to break one, though, obviously, and but so far so good on mine. It's still really too early to tell, though. Really too early to tell. Here's what we can say about the durability of the DJI system. It isn't like crap durability. You know, sometimes a product releases to the market and then they just get a zillion broken ones. Well, that hasn't happened. So then how good is the durability? We don't know yet. You're welcome, Jerry. Helped Jerry with a FreeSky receiver. Thank you. Motoko Kusanagi. What external 5-volt regulator do you recommend to power the flight controller? Motoko, you can get like Chinese 5-volt regulators for $3, $2 off of anywhere, Alibaba, Banggood, Amazon, you name it. They're fine. If you want like the best, the company is Pololu. Pololu makes very good voltage regulators. They're way more expensive than like the bargain basement Chinese ones, and frankly, like most of the time the Chinese ones are fine. But if you really want the best, Pololu is the way to go. They make excellent regulators. You just can't go wrong. What about, did Zoe FPV there we go. So earlier in the stream, somebody asked, where do you get 3D props from? Zoe says she orders from AliExpress, direct from APC, and GemFan. Sources from GemFan props are harder to find. Sounds like AliExpress and APC are the places she goes. Sounds like there's a real market for a, well, is there a market? There's an opening. Is there a demand, though, for a good 3D FPV prop? Let's see here. Leonidas GFX says, what flight controller would you recommend if gyro performance is the only concern? Leonidas, I would be looking at the SP Racing line, the H7 line, whether it's the H7 Extreme, the H7 Zero, or the H7 Ultimate. The thing that is unique about the SP Racing line is that they have dual gyros with sensor fusion. And what that means is that if you take two gyros and you mount them side by side, that's pointless because they just measure the exact same data. But if you take two gyros and you mount them side by side and you rotate one of them 90 degrees from the other, then if you think about it, the pitch axis on one is the roll axis on the other. And basically what you can do is you can subtract those out and cancel out a whole bunch of, you increase your signal to noise ratio. I think I know how many dB it is, but I'm not going to say it because then if I'm wrong, I'll look it up. So it's basically like free filtering, essentially. And that gives you just really, really good gyro performance. Now, the SP Racing line is not the only one to do that. The other one I know of is the iFlight Success Turbo Twin G. The iFlight flight controllers, some of them also have sensor fusion. So look at either of those. But I was talking about the SP Racing because if just like money is no object, like Dominic Clifton lovingly hand solders every single one of them, not literally, but he takes a lot of pride in the quality of his manufacturing. iFlight, they make good products, but they're a much bigger company working at much higher volumes. And so between the two, I would guess that the SP Racing line is going to be more consistently high quality. Let's see here. Where could you get an STM32F405 chip at? Asks Chamer in the Discord. Interesting question. My go-to for electronic parts is DigiKey. Let's see if we can find an STM32F405 on DigiKey. I bet we can. Yep, bingo. Now be careful because there are different form factors. So you're not actually guaranteed to get the exact chip that, like if you want to replace the flight controller, the chip on your flight controller, you have to make sure to order the exact right one. They're not all the same. But DigiKey is one place you can go. The other one that I've used in the past is Mauser. I started ordering from DigiKey years ago because DigiKey ships USPS, so it's like $2 shipping instead of like $7 for priority. But I'm sure you could buy one there as well. App user says, why would anyone use a 5-volt regulator? Most flight controllers have them built in nowadays. You're 100% right about that, app user. You know, presumably somebody had a need for it, but Ken Overby wants to know, is DRL patenting their L antenna mount and other component setups? Are they the best quads? Ken Overby, I don't know what you're talking about there with their patenting their L antenna mount. Maybe they're patenting it, maybe they're not. I don't know. DRL is not the best quadcopters. DRL, that's like asking if a stock car is the best car. Stock cars are great cars for racing around an oval, but they're not great cars for going to the grocery store. DRL makes a specific quad for their television production races, and they are great for that, but I wouldn't want one as my daily driver. Let's see here. Earlier in the stream, we were talking about running rapid fire with the FlySight Falcon FGO1 goggles, and I reached out to a friend of mine to see if he had any trouble with the power supply, and he said that the power supply in his goggle worked fine with his TrueDX, but he also adds that the cover for the rapid fire may not fit the goggles. So you may need a custom printed, 3D printed cover if you're going to run the rapid fire in the FlySight Fusion. Do I ever, the Ringer 1976 says, do you ever use any Flyduino ESCs? I don't, the Ringer. One reason is that they can be pretty expensive. The other reason is they are designed to be updated with and configured like with a KISS flight controller. So how do you update the firmware on a Flyduino KISS ESC? You do it through the telemetry wire on the KISS flight controller. And since I'm not commonly using KISS flight controllers, that I feel like KISS ESCs and KISS flight controllers are really made to go together. I probably wouldn't use them. They can. I know they can, but I wouldn't typically do that. Muki Woo. Yes, on the JBF4, the video wire for the camera is cam_S. That is correct. Definitely download the user manual for the JBF4 from the Race Day Quads product page if you're not sure about any of that. Let's see here. Got a couple more super chats coming in. GY Sergeant 03, I assume it's Sergeant SGT 0317. Thank you for $5. What are your thoughts or opinions on the Omnibus F4 V5 flight controller? Well, Omnibus is a solid flight controller and has been for years, but I feel like it's a little dated. Have they released like a new updated version of it with the V5? No, it's the same thing as always. It's okay. It's got some quirks that are a little annoying. But sometimes it's a little annoying to get S-Bus working. Like people will wire it up and they can't seem to get it working. I feel like there probably are better ones out there. But at a price of $35, it's okay. It'll definitely get the job done. It's not bad. It's definitely not cutting edge though. Henry Brosh, thanks for five more dollars. I'm using the HGLRC 438 stack. If I turn on the arm switch while the I understand the risk slider is on, they will all arm without moving the slider. Yeah, that's correct, Henry. That's how it's supposed to work. So in the Betaflight Motors tab, there's a I understand the risks, my props are off option. When you tick that box, you can use the sliders to move the motors, or you can arm the quad and the motors will begin spinning just as if you'd armed. So, it's your pick. Miro says, what about the new FetTech ESC made by Felix that supports Betaflight? Yeah, that's pretty cool. So let's see if I can find a reference to this. FetTech is the new, I guess is a new company made by Felix, the guy one of the main devs who started KISS. And it is a high performance ESC with like new stuff, new cool stuff, like one wire bus, all for ESCs and telemetry through one wire with up to 8 kilohertz loop time. With I don't actually know the stuff it's got. People are pretty excited about it. Has it got the new sine wave drive? 128K motor PWM. That's pretty impressive. 40-volt MOSFETs. Maybe it won't light on fire. Anyway, yeah. I have no experience with that, is bottom line. Brad Stevens asks, should motors have any play in them? Or is play an indication of old bearing or incorrect spacer? Brad, I would say the motors may have as much as perhaps maybe a half a millimeter of vertical play. There could be just the tiniest bit of vertical play because you don't want the motors to bind up, but not much. Like a millimeter is too much. And horizontal play, there should be basically none. Basically none. So I think if you have to ask that question, probably there's something up with your motors. Let's see. FPV Moon. Ah, finally, he picks it up. I pointed Joshua to this weeks ago. What are you talking about, FPV Moon? Are you talking about that ESC? Don't get mad if you like emailed me and were like, hey, you should check out this new product, and then I didn't like make a video about it the very next day, and then I mention it 2 weeks later, and you're like, finally, I told him about this weeks ago, guys. He just ignored me. I get a lot of messages and a lot of products, and I just can't make content about every single thing in the world. So don't take it personally, is my point. FPV Moon says, no, I'm not mad. No, I don't. I had somebody reach out to me, and he said, I had a lipo fire, and I just wanted to tell you about it. These lipos are dangerous. You got to be careful. And I was like, yeah, dude, take care. Be careful. And he said, this was actually my second lipo fire. And I was like, yeah, because one lipo fire, you're like, oh, now I found Jesus. I'm going to be careful. But if you have 2 lipo fires that burn your house down, you maybe don't need, you just maybe shouldn't have lipos anymore. You didn't, I don't want to judge, but he said, I had a lipo fire. I was like, yeah. And then later, he was mad at me. He emailed me and he was mad at me. And he was like, I think he wished I would have made a video about it or something. And I was like, I talk about lipo safety all the time. In fact, on the very next live stream after you emailed me, I did a whole segment about lipo safety. But I'm not going to make a video every time somebody emails me that they had a lipo burn go off, because I get a message like every 2 weeks, 3 weeks from somebody who's like, holy crap, lipos are dangerous. You got to tell people. And I'm like, I've been telling people. I've been telling people for months, for years. You didn't get the message. That's not my fault. I'm going to keep telling people. Sometimes people tell me things, and then when I don't respond the way they want, they take it personally. Please don't do that. Let's see here. Ken Overby says, Joshua, where do pilots post their stunts or tricks they create? Is there a website that's best? There isn't one, Ken. There's no formal naming for tricks. DRL tried to do a website with a trick cyclopedia. It hasn't been updated in forever, and the names for some of the tricks were freaking idiotic. No, just nobody has it's not like skateboarding where you'll do a front side ollie fakey stale fish with a flip, goofy footed. I don't skateboard. It's not like skateboarding or BMX where all the names of all the tricks have, like FPV, we just do things. So there isn't one source for the names. Let's see here. Let's see. Any other super chats? No, we're caught up on super chats. Great. How about the Discord? Nope, no. So, do you still think the Emax Tiny Hawk all-in-one kit is best for a newcomer? Asks Rick. Rick, I think, I don't know if it's the absolute best you could possibly spend money on, but it's not a bad choice. I feel like the Emax Tiny Hawk Ready to Fly kit, here's the thing. It's $160, I think. Okay. You get the Emax Tiny Hawk, $100 right there. That is every penny of $100. It's worth it. Or whatever it sells for, $105. I forget what it sells for. Emax Tiny Hawk is just a great quad, period. That money is money well spent. You got the transmitter, the Emax transmitter. You're going to outgrow that. You're going to throw it away. Okay, so that money, forget that money. I mean, but it's going to get you started. It's not like garbage. It's just you're going to very quickly outgrow it. Okay, and then you've got the Emax goggles, right? Those are decent goggles, and you could use them for a while. Eventually, you'll probably outgrow them, and then you'll still have them for spectator goggles or for use on the bench. So, I think that's probably one of the best values just for getting everything. I mean, you're in the air flying, and now you can start to decide if you want to spend more money on the hobby. Tiny Hawk RTF is a really good deal. Let's see here. Shark Racer. I'm at my laptop and I need help. The live stream is not the place to do that kind of troubleshooting, Shark. We're going to just make, what are we up to now? Peak current 413 viewers right now. We're going to make 413 people wait while we go through your laptop. I would love to help you, Shark Racer. Please reach out to me on Messenger or an email, and I will do my best to help you out. But this is not the time to do that kind of thing. But post your problem, the house blog says. Yeah, post your problem, because the chat could help you too. I'm not the only one who can help. I mean, I'll try. Serenity 17 says, I'm having some horizontal lines in my FPV feed after changing my XT30 to an XT60. What gives? That is a weird one, Serenity. Here's what I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess that the XT30 had enough resistance that it was sort of filtering out the high frequency noise, and that the XT60 has less resistance, and so the current can flow more freely and that high frequency noise can more easily get into your video. That's I'm just like taking a wild guess here, but it does have a capacitor on the flight controller. I guess that's good. I mean, I'm not sure what more than that you could do, because your quad is a Diatone GTR 349, so there's not like you have a ton of options for like moving the power around. It's all an integrated stack. You put the XT30 back on? Why'd you put the XT60 on? Like, does it really need an X? Maybe go back to the XT30. I don't know. Just saying. Let's see here. Orion Jakarov says, how do you guys get batteries shipped overseas without paying a fortune? Good question. Because batteries aren't allowed to go airmail anymore, I think, is the issue you're raising, Orion. And so they take forever to get there, or they cost a fortune. You got to buy from a local shop, I guess, is the bottom line. I don't know. When I buy from like CNHL online, it takes like 3 weeks for me to get the batteries. I mean, it just takes forever. Good tip there, Jason's 147 GTA says, try turning the power down on the video transmitter. If that gets rid of the lines in your video, it means that the regulator that you're using is kind of at the limit of the power it can provide. I think, to me, that's a long shot, but it's an interesting approach. Nick Schwartz wants to know, do you recommend the FreeSky QX7 even though it's pretty old? Nick Schwartz, the QX7 is a rock-solid radio, and I don't think you'll go wrong by buying it. Today, there are other options like the Jumper T16, has to be mentioned. $110 for a QX7, $160 for a Jumper T16, and I think they didn't even raise the price on the Hall Effect gimbal one. Also, the new FreeSky Access radios, the X9 Lite for about $70 to $90. I mean, that's pretty compelling. So, I don't know. The QX7 isn't a bad choice. If you're planning on running Crossfire, though, you got to pick something else, because the inverter mod is just like, it's not the end of the world. But like, if you knew you were going to run Crossfire, I don't think you should buy the QX7, because then you'll have to do the inverter mod. Let's see here. Dead Laszlo says, Joshua, I have to reboot my Split Mini 2 every time I plug a battery into my Diatone Tyrant. Otherwise, I have a blank screen every time. Is this correct? No, that is not how it should work. That is not right. Something isn't right about that. Sergio Austra wants to know what my opinion is about the Xylo Stacks combo. So the Xylo Stacks, that's this combo from Get FPV. Xylo, in case you don't know, is Get FPV's house brand. This is their kind of budget house brand, and then Lumineer is their premium house brand. And the Xylo Stacks, for $75, you get a flight controller and a 45 amp 6S capable ESC that integrate really well. It has a really cool feature where on the underside you can direct solder. I think you can direct solder the receiver, like if you're using a Crossfire receiver. It's pretty slick. And it's backed by Get FPV. That's one of the things I say. There are some Get FPV products that are just like the Lumineer Alpha flight controller. I'm 99% sure that's just a Racer Star flight controller that they've rebadged. But I ain't mad about it, because if you buy a Racer Star from Banggood and it craps out on you, you're kind of boned. Maybe you'll get but if you buy a product from Get FPV and then it craps out on you, they will take care of you. So the Xylo Stacks, easy to build, integrated, plugs together. I'm sure the performance is as good as anything else, and if anything goes wrong, you have Lumineer to back you, have Get FPV to back you up. So I don't think you go wrong. Camilo Henao wants to know what happens if I don't set RSSI scale to 200 with F-port. So in case you didn't know, if you use FreeSky F-port protocol, RSSI is automatically updated. You don't need to do any more wiring or fiddling around. F-port carries RSSI to the flight controller automatically. Yet another reason to use F-port instead of S-bus. But you have to go into the CLI and set the RSSI scale to 200. If you don't set the RSSI scale to 200, I believe what happens is that the RSSI maxes out at 50%. I think that's what happens. So Zypo4 wants to know, what would you recommend as the next drone to get after getting good with the Tiny Hawk? Are you thinking about going to 3-inch, or are you thinking about going to 5-inch? That's the next question. You got to start building at some point, as the other thing. Let's see here. Robert Forrester says, Eachine trash can left front motor spins up once, then fails. Swap motor, swap the board, still has the same problems. What should I try next? You swap the flight controller, so you swap the ESC too. And you swap the motor. So I swapped the motor again? I mean, it's got to be one of those two things. It can't be anything else. Robert, I assume you're using the motor slider, right? On the motors tab. Maybe a wiring problem, but you swap the motor and you swap the flight controller. What else could it be? Let's see. Just Josh. First of all, let me just say, for the record, Just Josh, express yourself in any way that obviously you feel is best. But this, like, watch this. Look, I'm gonna tag Just Josh oh no, I can't tag you, can I? Because your name uses Unicode characters, and how am I supposed to make this character? Let's tag him. I'm responding to no. So this is cute, but I'm old and grumpy. You kids get off my lawn. Okay, anyway, Just Josh wants to know, are the Access radios still able to connect to the ACCST receivers? And the answer is yes, they are, but you have to update the firmware on the Access radio. There's a firmware update you need to do. Right now, Albert Kim has a video out showing how to do it. I have a video recorded that I just need to post, but I'm finishing my Stingy build first, showing how to do it. If you update the firmware, you can still connect D16 radios, but not D8 radios, only D16. But that will do it. I know. You can click on the name as well. It is possible, but when I click on the name, see, look, when I click on the name, oh, no, come on. When I click on the name, it doesn't at tag it direct messages, see? So what I need to do is I need to do like this, and I need to copy. Oh, no, I can't do that. Oh my God, for real? Hang on. There we go. We're gonna Control C and then at. Oh yeah, see, there we go. Yeah, if I just hit at, it does show recent. So anyway, is that Arabic? Okay, whatever. You kids with your funny characters in your names and all that. Just use regular letters like real people. Oh man. Shark Racer, does anyone know why video format options in Betaflight won't show up? Yeah, your configurator is old or your firmware is old. Get on a recent firmware and download the latest configurator version and it should show up. AZ Drone Dude, do you recommend 1407 4000 kV motor for 3-inch freestyle? If not, what do you recommend? I'm so glad you asked that, because I am working on speccing out a 3-inch Acrobat build, and I am being helped by my friend Aaron Ciotti. Let me just check. Aaron Ciotti he knows about a lot about all things quads, but he knows a lot about micros, and that's why I turned to him. And when we spec'd the build, we looked at 1407 motors, and what he said was that he felt like 1407 was too tall and that it just would not have a linear power band, that would be a little hard to control, kind of like all or nothing. He said 1407 is like, he would take it, but he would probably prefer a throttle curve. What he thought was the best for a heavier 3-inch build like the Acrobat was a 1506 motor. But unfortunately, there are like no 1506 motors out yet. However, he has a prototype 1506 motor that he's testing from a vendor who we're not at liberty to name. It's coming to market soon. And I'm just naming names because I don't care. But iFlight is working on a 1506 motor that I'm waiting on. My 3-inch Acrobat build, I'll be doing it when iFlight finally sends me their 1506. And when Aaron heard that that this 1506 motor was coming out, he was so excited. Like, apparently he thinks that's just the perfect motor for like a 3-inch Acrobat build. So there you go. Motoko Kusanagi, you want to know when I'm doing the video on Motor KV. Motoko, I think what you're talking about is I showed a spreadsheet on one of my earlier videos. Is it in documents? It's in Excel, isn't it? I'm going to show the spreadsheet, but I got to find it. I can't decide if it's in Google Drive or in Excel. Where is it? Most interesting live stream ever. Here we go. It was this. Motoko, I think you're asking about this spreadsheet right here. Yeah, so I asked, and this spreadsheet shows suggested KV ranges for different battery voltage and prop size. I asked Ryan Harrell what he thought of this, and Ryan Harrell, he runs the website MiniQuad Test Bench, which he knows a lot about motors and ESCs, he said that he thought that there were some multipliers that should be applied to these because different props have different relationship to battery voltage and RPM. So he gave me some multipliers to apply, and I haven't gotten around to adding those to the spreadsheet, but I didn't want to release the spreadsheet when it wasn't going to have accurate information, so we're still holding on that. Sam Sneed, thank you for $10 in the super chat. Just a reminder, guys, if you want to make sure I get to your question promptly. There's not a lot of super chats coming in, so I will probably get to it promptly. Sam Sneed, thank you for $10. What are your thoughts on FreeSky and Crossfire? I would love a new Tyrannus, but it's unlikely they will support Crossfire. Nirvana and Jumper seem like bad ideas. I agree. If you are focused on Crossfire, I think you should think twice about getting a FreeSky radio, because even if it works today, FreeSky has more than demonstrated that they will do whatever they can get away with to lock Crossfire out of their ecosystem. So the inverter mod on the QX7, FreeSky did that on purpose, specifically to break Crossfire compatibility and hurt their performance. The new form factor module bay, they did that. I mean, I'm sure that FreeSky would give you all kinds of reasons why they did that are good reasons that have nothing to do with Crossfire. But it so happens it also doesn't work with Crossfire unless you have a 3D printed nonsense. And even if Crossfire worked on a given radio today, I wouldn't count on the fact that it's going to work tomorrow, especially given the close relationship that OpenTX and FreeSky have. One of the OpenTX devs is an employee now. He was hired by FreeSky. The OpenTX project, I've asked them about this, and they say, pardon me, they say, no, we work closely with FreeSky. We work with a bunch of other vendors too. They have no special position to dictate our project, but I feel like there's definitely reasons to kind of squint at some of these things. And so, what radio should you get then? The Nirvana, you might have noticed, you probably didn't notice, but some of you might have noticed that if you search my channel for videos about the underground FPV Nirvana, they're not there. I took them down. And the reason for that is, hang on, I'm going to tell you what this message that I sent to the owner of Underground FPV. I said, I want to give you a heads up that based on the whole of the situation around the Nirvana radio, I've decided to pull my content about it. Users are consistently contacting me saying they purchased the radio based on my recommendation, then didn't receive the radio or were unable to get support for it. Firmware development has been inconsistent, with some users turning to a community repo with builds posted on RC groups. I understand that not all of the problems with the radio's release were Underground FPV's fault, and in fact, you got screwed over in several ways. They did. Underground FPV bears a lot of responsibility for the success of this radio, but also there are some things that happened that I'm not at liberty to go into where Underground FPV really got screwed over and didn't deserve it. In the end, if users are not able to reliably get support and firmware updates for the radio, I can't stand behind it, no matter how good the hardware is. The Nirvana is very, very good hardware, but if you are content to, compile your own firmware from a GitHub repo, then go for the Nirvana. But so I agree. The Nirvana, I have some. If you already own one, you got to make the best of it. But if you don't already own one, I'm not sure I would recommend buying one. So that leaves the Jumper T16. And the Jumper T16 is decent hardware. Jumper OpenTX is not building firmware for the radio, though, so you have to rely on Jumper to build firmware for the radio. And hopefully they will continue to do that. I don't know. So what's the great answer? What's the great answer? If you want to run Crossfire, do you take a gamble that FreeSky won't screw you over? Or do you take a gamble that Jumper will continue to make firmware? Ooh, I know. Buy a TBS Tango. Ha! That's a radio that will be guaranteed to run Crossfire forever. There you go. I didn't give you. There's no good answer. There's no good answer. I like the Jumper T16. It's $160. You get a lot of functionality for $160. If someday Jumper just disappears off the face of the earth and you can't get firmware updates anymore, it'll probably keep working. I don't know. Yeah, X9D. FreeSky X9D. That's the one. As long as it continues to be supported by OpenTX, it'll probably keep running Crossfire. There you go. Tango 2 is coming out, apparently. It's like 2 weeks away and has been for the last 6 months. Jonathan K., thank you for $2. Jonathan reminds us that if you're looking for 3-inch motors, the Brat motors from Umagod, so maybe someday they'll come back. Mike Jacoby says it doesn't seem as if Underground FPV paid anyone to do the firmware for the Nirvana. Mike, the version of the story I've heard is that someone was paid to do the firmware, then they didn't. And then Underground FPV had to do all the development in-house because who they expected to do it didn't do it. Now, that version of the story came from people who are on a certain side of the issue, and the people on the other side of the issue probably have a different version of the story. But that's a version of the story that I heard. Let's see here. Ruftaman, my friend's X9D doesn't want to bind to anything. How do I find out if the internal RF module even works? Ruftaman, if you had a power meter, like the Immersion RC RF power meter, you could detect that the antenna was putting off a signal. Other than that, I'm not sure how you're going to detect that it's working. If it's not binding, my best guess is that you have the wrong region. So if your receivers are all in the EU region and your radio somehow is in the FCC region, they won't bind. You can try to fix that. What I would do in your situation, Ruftaman, is I would try to flash firmware to both the receivers and to the internal module of the X9D. Go to the FreeSky website, download the latest EU firmware if you're in the EU, FCC firmware if you're in the FCC, flash that to the module, do the same thing with your receivers, and just 100% guarantee that they have compatible firmware. Sean Hale says Brat motors are in stock on Tommy's page. Oh, interesting. Maybe you can still get them. License to Drive and Mr. Tux are talking about signal boosters. Be very careful with those signal boosters, guys. The signal, like you get a 2 watts, 2.4 gigahertz signal booster, they are not, there are all kinds of problems that they can manifest. They're not the panacea that it seems like they are. They can overheat, they can corrupt the signal. I mean, the worst case scenario is they just won't improve things much at all. But be really careful about those. They're not necessarily just like, oh, now I'm transmitting at 2 watts. I mean, they may also be illegal. Not that many of you guys care about that, but they may not be legal. Tweet FPV says, if FreeSky made the Nirvana, it would be a total winner. Well, yeah, but there's a reason they're not doing that. Let's see here. License to Drive says the booster I got improved things a lot. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying they don't work. They can work. The Mighty Thor says, can you explain the difference between a 1506 and a 1507 Brother Hobby Avengers motor? So with the motors, the 15 is the diameter of the stator, and the 06 and 07 is the height of the stator, width and height. No. Yeah, width and height. So a 1507 is taller than a 1506 and that means it has more stator volume. It means that it can generate more power and draw more current. But the other thing is that the wider motors versus taller motors, wider motors are, it's not 100% accurate, but wider motors are said to have more torque. Taller motors are said to have more top end, but less linearity. So it basically can affect the throttle curve as well. GDub FPV says, how much expo should I use? I'm not getting the roll rate that I want. GDub, I would first try to set the full stick deflection rate to be what you want. So do a full stick snap roll and adjust that. And then you can adjust expo to change your center stick sensitivity. Jason's 147 GTA wants to know, is it true that iFlight is owned by DJI? I don't know the answer to that. Some people have suggested that iFlight is owned by DJI, but based on some corporate documents. Other people suggested that that was a different iFlight. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure if that's true or not. Chase has FPV says, any idea when Betaflight 4.1 is going to officially release? Betaflight 4.1, I think it's targeted for October, but I'm not 100% sure. You can get that info off the GitHub repo. They will have a target release date. Sometimes they move the release date, but Clay McCamey wants to know what frequencies below 5 gigahertz are legal for FPV video in the USA. Clay, there are a bunch of unlicensed frequency bands that we can use for anything we want, including video. 2.4 gigahertz is probably the most common out other than 5 gigahertz. 1.3 gigahertz is also used. Below 1.3 gigahertz, though, I think that, I mean, there is a 900 megahertz unlicensed band, but it doesn't have enough bandwidth to carry video signals. TAC FPV in the chat. Hello, TAC. Hey, TAC. Hey, TAC. I got your frame, TAC. This is TAC FPV's signature frame from Flynoceros. It's pretty freaking cool. And I'm either going to build it or do it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it's pretty freaking cool. Flynoceros has good designs. TAC, I'm just going to assume that Josh Ingram designed this because I don't, no offense, TAC. Did you come up with this? Really? No. It's pretty freaking cool, though. The base plate, it's a one-piece base plate, and it's got these TPU printed, like, thingies that hold the top plate to the base plate. And I just love how the kind of base plate just lifts off. It's pretty freaking slick. It's a pretty cool design. I bet it's pretty durable, too. Shadow FPV, why don't more people use 1.3 gigahertz for video? Well, for one thing, that you can only get like 1 or 2 pilots in the air at the same time. One of the big advantages of 5 gigahertz is that there is so much frequency bandwidth, you can get 8, maybe more pilots in the air. So 1.3 gig also has bigger, more complicated antennas. Jason's 147 GTA says, thoughts on KISS versus Betaflight. Why do pros fly KISS? Do they, Jason's? Do pros fly KISS? Okay, so there's Mr. Steele. Got it. Okay, he flies KISS. Yeah, we know. Who else flies KISS? I mean, I'm just asking. I'm not trying to dog. If you look at top racers, they're usually flying Flight 1 or Betaflight. They're definitely not flying KISS. And lots of top freestyle pilots are flying Flight 1 or Betaflight. I think KISS feels a lot like a niche product. The people who fly it love it. But I think there's, now the chat is going to fill up with pros. Okay, Nowak. Yep. Chad Nowak, Final Glide. And who else? What do the pros fly KISS? Cosmics HD says more pros fly Flight 1 than KISS. Maybe. I think that's difficult to pin down. Vanover had a KISS quad for a while. Yeah, it lit on fire, too. It's in one of my vlogs. His ESC lit on fire. To be fair, Vanover is pretty hard on us. Lexi flies KISS. Okay. There you go. Lexi. That's 3. Snake FPV. Okay. Well, I know they're out there. TAC flies KISS? No, I don't think so. Vic FPV flies KISS? Okay. See, I knew this is how I learn things. Onigiri. TAC would have to be a pro, though, for him to count in this. I don't fly KISS. Vanover and Cricket both fly Flight 1. I believe that's correct. Yes. Tumbleweed thinks more pros. This is just a survey now. More pros fly Betaflight than KISS or Flight 1. I don't know. Tweet FPV wants to know if I've flown any toothpick class quads. Well, that depends. We'd have to define what a toothpick is, because apparently anything with no ducts and to 2.5-inch props counts as a toothpick. Now, by Kebab's definition, a toothpick is 73 grams and has press-on props. And no, I haven't actually flown one of those. But do you mean legit toothpicks, Tweet FPV? Or do you mean like the expanded toothpick definition? Jonathan K, thanks for $2. What do you think of the new Tyrannus X9? The new Tyrannus is pretty slick. If it had a JR module bay and I could put a Crossfire module in it, I'd be more excited. But it doesn't. So let's see here. That HX100 behind you is one. You're right. Beta FPV HX100. Let's get this thing out of the box. It's been sitting in the box behind me This is a legit toothpick. We're not going to try and like set it up and fly it here on the stream. That would be silly. But let's at least get it off out of the box. They both know I haven't flown the Larva X behind me. I'm going to be reviewing it eventually. You know, like in 27 months when I actually get around to flying it, because that's how my schedule works. Because I'm too busy making educational content. By the time I get around to reviewing something, it's all been replaced by the next generation. Oh, that's pretty solid. See, is this a toothpick? This ain't 73 grams. It sure as heck doesn't have press-on props. I think the definition of toothpick has definitely expanded. It's pretty cool, though. It's pretty cool. It's pretty solid. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. It's pretty solid. Should it come with a battery? I hope it came with a battery. Otherwise, I don't know how I'm going to fly it. Nope, just props. Oh well. I'll have to figure that out. Well, no, but they're Burger Lord. They are press-on props, but they also have bolt holes. They screw on. William Hayes, you can use Crossfire on the X9 Lite with an adapter and a nightly build. But William Hayes, I'm annoyed that I have to go through that. Like, if FreeSky is going to bust their ass to make it hard for me to run Crossfire on the X9 Lite, maybe I'm just going to be like, all right, screw you. Fine, I won't do it. Go take your ball and go home. The fact that I have to download a nightly build and then have to 3D print an adapter to plug it in, I'm just like, I can do these things. I'm just annoyed that you're making me do these things. Maybe I'm just going to go get a Jumper T16 and, you know, or for freaking X9D. Yeah. Am I going to do a full review video on the H7 Extreme, asks Nismo? Maybe. Maybe. After using it in this build, it might get a full video. I don't know. Depends on how much I'm working on other things. Kebab was in Umagod's latest video? That's cool. They got together. Ken Simmons points out I could use the Spectrum IX12. It's true. I could go with a Spectrum radio. I like OpenTX. OpenTX is my jam. Spectrum makes very good radios. I will say, I'm gonna spoil Drew's latest vlog because I'm sure he's gonna vlog about this eventually. Or it's the middle of my live stream though. Nobody's actually watching this. Drew was flying a X9D or a Spectrum, a Horizon Hobby 9X, 9X, whatever, the Spectrum 9 radio, and he said he had some problem with his IX12 and he switched back to the 9, and he kind of liked it better than the IX12. And I was like, what do you like better about it? He's like, when I turn it on, it just turns on instead of having to wait for Android to boot up. I was like, oof. And at the end of the trip, he was like, I might just switch back to my X9 instead of an IX12. And I have to say, every single pro I know who received an IX12 from Spectrum isn't using it anymore. And now Drew was the holdout, and he might still be using it, but he might switch off it. Rufta Man, thank you for 10 CHF. I don't even know what a CHF is, but thank you for 10 of them. Thanks for all you do, Josh. I regularly learn something from you every day, even though I only fly KISS. I'm glad you're here. Redbeard, thank you for $5. What are your thoughts on the flight test 2.5-inch Gremlin frames versus the 3-inch Acrobat? Well, 2.5 and a 3-inch are not the same beast. Let's look at the 2.5-inch Gremlin frame from flight test. Let's look at it. And let's see. I mean, I think we're going to find it doesn't compare like 1-to-1 with the Acrobat. Like, is it a top mount battery, for example? Is it a bottom mount? The Acrobat's, yeah, it's a bottom mount. So the Acrobat is a very specific thing designed to give quality, high-definition footage from a 3-inch quad that flies more like a 5-inch. This is a 2.5-inch bottom mount. It's going to be in a slightly different weight class. It might fly better if what you're looking for is like racing performance. I think a 2.5-inch, even though it's only a half-inch difference in the props, I think it's a little different. It's Zweistein says, hey, Pagoda with 800 milliwatt transmitter and a triple feed patch as a receiver. What range will it reach? Impossible to say. I mean, I'm going to give you a number, but it's impossible to say for sure because, like, if you have an 800 milliwatt transmitter, is it outputting 800 milliwatts or 600 or 400? You don't know. It depends, right? So if we assume an honest 800 milliwatts, I feel like that setup should easily go 2 kilometers without trying hard, assuming clear line of sight, right? Somewhere, past that, I think it's a little hard to say what you're going to get. People in the chat are pointing out there's several different Gremlin body styles. I know, but he was specifically asking about the 2.5-inch. So I thought I looked up specifically the 2.5-inch. Is this one? What's this one? Which Gremlin is for you? Standard Gremlin. Where's the 2.5-inch? Well, they all seem like bottom mounts. Anyway. Tweet FPV wants to know, would a 3B Racing 4218 motor pair well with an iFlight 80 amp ESC on 8S? I don't know. That is, when you get into, like I said, when I got into Beast class, I just said to Catalyst Machine Works, tell me what to buy. I'm starting to figure out, like, my Beast class rig is 12S. So I'm starting to figure out what works on 12S, but I have no experience with 8S. So I'm sorry to say, Tweet FPV, would you, I mean, you could try, there's a Beast class and an X class group on Facebook that would probably be able to get you better answers there. That size of motor and that voltage, I just don't know. My gut feeling is 80 amps is going to be okay. On my 12S 390 kV setup, I have 120 amp ESCs and they work okay. That's marginal for like 390 kV. You should really be down on, these are 12-inch, 13-inch props. I can't remember which. That's marginal. You should really be down around 345 kV. So I feel like an 80 amp on 8S and 120 amp on 12S, like, it seems like it's proportional. But I don't, it's still really outside my realm. Stan Jansen wants to know, do I solder the XT60 to the Bardwell ESC or the flight controller? Stan, if you're using a 4-in-1 ESC, the XT60 lead will be soldered to the ESC. Then the ESC will have a plug that goes to the flight controller. And that's generally true of just about any 4-in-1 ESC and any compatible flight controller. Redbeard, you were specifically asking about the new F4 microstack. Redbeard, if you give me a link to the product you're specifically asking about, then I'll link to it. Hey, Turbo FPV World, this is not a replay, and you are not on my channel anymore. Congratulations. There are certain slurs that will just get you instantly banned, and that was one of them. Congratulations, you found it. I'm not saying you can't say certain words. I'm just saying you can't call me certain names. See? Vasilis Philosis. Any advice to give me as a noob trying to learn and fly a Wizard X220 HV? Yeah, get a simulator. Get a simulator, practice in the simulator. That's not the answer that you want to hear, but that is actually the right answer. So, if you want to, because you're going to crash the wizard, you're going to break it, and then you're going to be boned. But in the simulator, if you crash, you just reset, and you can get those first 50, 100, 200, 500 crashes out of the way. That's what I would really recommend. GW FPV wants to know, is Crossfire needed? No. GW Crossfire gives additional range and link reliability, but 2.4 gigahertz control is more than enough as a beginner. And Crossfire adds a level of complexity that, well, I don't know if that's true. Crossfire is actually easier to wire up than like S-Bus and SmartPort. But if all you're doing is wiring up like S-Bus and an XM Plus receiver, 2.4 gigahertz can be simpler and give plenty of range for a beginner. Crossfire is not needed. If a person comes to me and says, I'm building my first quad and I'm going to go Crossfire, I don't discourage them from doing that. If you have the money, go for it. It's not that much more complicated. But if you're tight on money and you're going to start with 2.4 gig, not a problem at all. Just not needed at all. Want to get fly? Thank you for $5.13. I don't know why that exact number, but the question is, what semi-permanent adhesive for UFL connection on VTX do you recommend? This is the adhesive. I've asked this question before, and other people have told me this is the answer. So I haven't actually tested this, but people tell me, you get the VTX like from the manufacturer, and it has that yellow adhesive on it. People have told me that this is the stuff. You who pour. That's what they've told me it is. I've not personally verified this, but that's what they've told me. The chat will now tell me if I'm true. If that's true. Yeah, that's what they use at the factory to hold the UFL on. So, that's the stuff. It says you who pour is like contact cement. Is it? Is that the stuff that comes from the... Well, what is it then? You use... Marcos Huerta just uses E6000. You could certainly use E6000. Craft King says there are different types of Yuhu pour. Cesar Aquiles uses liquid electrical tape. No, Craft King says no, that maybe Yuhu pour wasn't the right stuff. Well, for $5.13, the least I can do is give you a good answer. RC Boffa says, no, that's not the stuff on antennas. Huckleberry FPV, don't use hot glue on a VTX. VTXs typically get hot enough to melt hot glue, so no. Liquid electrical tape, I mean, E6000 is not a bad choice. It's a little more flexible. Maybe it would be pretty good. Free Sky antenna glue? Liquid electrical tape. It's not a bad answer. Quadrophenia. Quadrophenia, who are you and how are you a moderator on my channel? What did you do to get to be moderator? I don't recognize your name. I mean, I must have made you a mod, so... Are you somebody else? And you changed your username? Anyway. Oh, Quadrophenia, you're Steve M. Okay, I thought so. I didn't recognize your name, but I knew you. I was only like 3 mods on my channel. Want to get fly. Thank you for your $5.13 donation. The official answer to your question is E6000 adhesive. That is not the actual stuff that they use, but since the stuff that they use doesn't seem to be Yuhu pour, then I'm going to go with E6000. Ken Overby, your question about Blade RC and the Vortex, you've asked it like 15 times because you're trying to catch my attention, and I keep skipping it because I don't know the answer, but I wanted to save you the trouble of asking it again and let you know I saw your question. I don't know if Blade RC manufactured the Vortex, etc. What are my thoughts on the Vortex for beginners? To be honest with you, the Vortex is a solid quad, but it's pretty out of date. The gear on the Vortex is pretty dated. I think you probably, I hate to say it because, Immersion is a good company. It's a solid product. I do like that the Vortex can be set up without a computer. You can set up the Vortex completely in the OSD like Falco X is doing now years later. But overall, I think you probably can do better for your money on a Vortex, especially because the Vortex has proprietary ESCs, proprietary main boards. So when you break stuff, you're just going to be buying that stuff from Immersion RC. You're not actually going to be learning how to work on a quad. So there you go. That's your answer, Ken. Craft King says on Banggood there is Free Sky antenna fixing glue. I guess. I mean, let's look. Free Sky antenna fixing glue. Okay, well, I mean, I guess for $6 you can't go wrong. But I would rather have a tube of E6000 that I can use for a million things. Ciotti FPV is in the chat. Hey, remember I mentioned earlier on the stream this dude? His name is Ciotti, Aaron Ciotti, and he knows so much about microquads, but he knows a lot about a lot of things. But microquads are what I actually have reached out to him for help with. And he came on my live stream a couple weeks in a row, had a great time, had so much fun. He started doing his own live streams, and I'm telling you about this now because it's now 9:47. I finished my live stream at 10, and he is piggybacking on my live stream. After we finish up here in just about 10 minutes, if you can't get enough, if you have questions about 3 inches, 2 inches, 2.5 inches, tiny whoops, or yes, even 5 inches, Aaron Ciotti is going to be doing a Q&A live stream on his channel, and hopefully he will post a link to his live stream here. Don't go. We still got 10 more minutes, but hopefully he's going to start at it right around 10 after I finish up. And if YouTube supported the ability like Twitch raids where you guys could just go raid his live stream, then I would do that. But YouTube doesn't support that. So it's Aaron Ciotti. It's A-H-R-E-N Ciotti. Took me a million years to figure out how to actually say his freaking name. Now that I can say it, I say it all I can. Sometimes I just walk around the house saying Aaron Ciotti, Aaron Ciotti, Aaron Ciotti. Then he appears in my bathroom mirror. No, wait. He'll post the link. Give it a second. He'll post the link. Place It Here says, well, thank you for $5. Place It Here. What would cause my HDOs to be out of focus? Is it the camera on my Whoop? That's the first and most likely cause. Place It Here. If you suspect that the HDO is out of focus, you could use the HDMI input and just plug it into your computer. Your computer has to be at 720 resolution or lower, or it won't work. So just set your computer down to like 640 by 480 or whatever, and then plug your HDO in and see if it looks clear. It's probably the camera though, or test on another quad, right? Obviously, want to get fly. Aaron Cincinnati, that's correct. That's it, Aaron Cincinnati. Yeah, you can just click on his name in the chat, but don't go yet. We still got 10 more minutes. I'm going to put the best stuff in this last 10 minutes just so you guys stick around. Why does no one use the R9 from Free Sky? Cameron Kernigan. I mean, I dispute that, Cameron. A lot of people use the R9. I think you will find that most pros use Crossfire because Crossfire is just that little bit more reliable in terms of like firmware bugs, hardware, and has some convenience features like over-the-air firmware updates that R9 currently doesn't have, although they're working on catching up. And when you're a pro, you can justify spending a little bit more, whereas when you're a beginner on a budget, you have to spend less. Like, for example, right now, I got to word this carefully because I don't want to spread bad information. I am receiving a lot of messages right now about people with R9mm receivers. And what the people are telling me is that the R9mm receiver is dying. It's losing its bind and it won't bind anymore, or it's DOA. And like, I've gotten so many messages about this in the last few weeks that I thought, I wonder if there's a bad batch of R9 receivers out there. If I were to say that there was, that would be irresponsible. But I can tell you the facts, and that is that I've gotten a lot of messages in the last few weeks. One guy said, I bought 6 of these receivers, and every single one of them like just died immediately. It's like, wow, that sucks, dude. Crossfire? That just doesn't happen. So when you say, why does everybody seem to use Crossfire and nobody seems to use R9? The reality is that people like me who are making videos on YouTube are all using Crossfire. There is a huge community of people who love R9. And some people who are frustrated that their receivers died. They're just not as visible, I think. Yep. All right. Ciati's posted the link to his live stream. We got about 10 more minutes. Chamber says Crossfire is just better. I'm not a pro, but I bought the app. I bought the top stuff. Yep. Suggestions on a replacement battery for Fat Shark goggles, anyone? Asks Motzi. Motzi, my personal preference is the Fat Shark 18650 battery case. It is a battery case that you just put two 18650 lithium cells in. This is a $20 listing. You can get it for like $14. Just don't buy it off of Amazon. I like it a lot. I like that the 18650 cells are replaceable. They're easy to recharge, and it's pretty durable. As opposed to buying like this, like you could spend $22 on a Tattoo 2S battery specifically for Fat Sharks, but then like when it dies, then you're just done. Whereas 18650 cells you can use for a million things. Yeah, Ciati says, I gave up on R9 as well. It just falls out of the sky for no reason. Them's fighting words, Ciati. You go in an R9 forum and you say, I gave up on it because it fell out of the sky for no reason. And they'll be like, yeah, but did you have the right firmware? Did you upgrade to the firmware? But then it turns out that firmware had a bug, so you have to downgrade to the firmware one before that. Except when the bug is fixed, then you have to upgrade to the new beta firmware. And don't forget, you got to also update your receivers, not just your module. Because if they don't have the same firmware, then you're going to drop out of the sky for no reason, which totally never happens if you know what you're doing. And that's why pros use Crossfire. R9 works when it works. It's just, when is it not going to work? Anyway. Crossfire is not perfect. Crossfire is not perfect. Crossfire has had a bug. In fact, just now, someone told me that they had a problem with Crossfire, and someone told me that TBS support told them to not run the latest X.95, but to run the 0.93 version of the Crossfire firmware. And I was like, okay, Crossfire is not perfect, but I think Crossfire, one of the things Crossfire does is it forces the module and the receiver to be on the same firmware version. If they're not on the same firmware version, it won't bind, and it'll do an over-the-air firmware update. So if you have a receiver that has a different firmware version and you go to fly, it's just like, hold on a second, and then like 2 minutes later, you're in the air. But R9 will allow you to have different firmware versions on the receiver and the module. And my guess is that a lot of problems people have come from that. That's just my guess. Let's see here. Thibault wants to know, do you like the fact that currently our hobby is very DIY? And if so, how much of that is keeping it from growing? That's a little bit of a chicken and the egg problem, Thibault. All hobbies like this start, like look at computers, PCs. The very first computers were hand soldered in people's, like I'm talking about in like the 70s and the 80s. Hand soldered in people's garages. You know, you had to order the parts, you had to build it, and there were very few people that were willing to go to that trouble. I think it's difficult to say which comes first, because as interest in the hobby grows, money comes in. People show up who want to make money by making the hobby easier and more accessible. Look at Steve Jobs, right? And these people, by attracting money and investing money, develop products that are easier to use. And then there's a snowball effect where the easier to use it is, the more people can come in and so forth. So you say, is the DIY nature of the hobby making it harder for it to grow? When there is sufficient interest in the hobby, then money will be attracted. Then it can be made easy to use. But there has to be interest. There has to be a belief on the part of someone with a lot of money that it's worth investing that money to make the hobby easier and more accessible, and they have to believe that they're going to get their money back. And we don't really see that happening right now. Why are quads? Look at DJI in the photography drone world. DJI has made photography drones so easy to use and relatively difficult, although not impossible, to crash. And as a result, so many people go out and buy a DJI and they fly it and they have fun. Can that be done for racing drones? That's an interesting question. The question is there a big enough market for racing drones to attract enough money that someone will put the investment into making racing drones easy to use? I don't know about that, because racing drones are inherently hard to use. Think about the difference between a commuter vehicle. Like, are we going to have self-driving commuter vehicles? Yeah, soon. Just totally self-driving. You're just not even going to touch them anymore. Are we going to have self-driving race cars anytime soon? No. The whole point of a race car, I mean, maybe, but the whole point of a race car is that you've got some guy out there, he's driving the car. Okay? Racing drones are inherently you fly them and you crash them. And that in and of itself is a barrier to entry because fewer people want to have that experience. I think the inherent market for racing and freestyle drones is smaller than photography drones. And as a result, it's going to be harder to attract that investment money to make them easier to use. But not impossible, because if you look at something like what DRL is doing, Drone Racing League, I mean, there's way more people out there who would like to be flying a racing drone and who don't know it exists. So that's why I think DRL is really doing great things by exposing these people to it. And these people are going to try to get into drone racing. They're going to be incredibly, incredibly frustrated. And hopefully someone will come along and say, hold on, I can make this easier to use and more accessible to more people. Or hopefully, because if that person shows up with $50 million and says, I'm just going to make racing drones easy to use, I'm going to be the DJI of racing drones, you're just going to be able to put them in the air and fly them, and you're never going to have to pull out a soldering iron, a lot of people would see that as a threat and would say, get out of here, buddy, you're ruining our fun. But if you look at other industries, the path that we will take, if we take a path to wider acceptance, is quite clear and transparent, because it's happened with PCs. Now you don't solder up your computer. You just go buy a computer and you plug in your hard drives. And even if you build your own computer, you don't solder it up. The path is very clear. And that didn't kill PC enthusiasts and PC enthusiasm. It made it better. Do you think that we would be better today if when you bought a new graphics card, you had to like solder it up with a soldering iron in your garage? No. So I think that path can be a good thing for the hobby. I think that it's a ways off from happening because there's just not enough interest, not enough market, not enough money to be made to counteract the R&D. So I think we're going to be the way we are for a long time. But there you go. Those are my thoughts. And having now killed the last 6 minutes of the live stream with that little, I hope you enjoyed that. I wasn't even watching the chat. I was so busy just formulating my thoughts and spitting them out. So I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah, Tumbleweed 30 says the barrier to entry is good because less dumb people fly in parks. I mean, there is some truth to that. It's so many people. I feel for the people who want to get into this hobby and are so frustrated by all of the skills you need to get into it. I wish it were easier. Ciati says, do you think that's a good thing? Computers can't slam someone in the face at 70 miles an hour. Yeah, I mean, I really think that's an education problem. Let's face it. There are a lot of freaking boneheads who can solder and build a quad, and then they go do stupid shit. So the answer to that is education, locking out people behind this barrier of skill is not preventing boneheads from doing things. Anyway, I would love to be able to fly a racing drone or a freestyle drone where I don't have to pull out a soldering iron every time something breaks. I can. I don't mind doing that, but I would love to not have to do it. The problem is that just the quality isn't there. We don't have standards like the PCI standard, the SCSI standard, whatever. All these standards that let computer parts plug together, we just don't have those, and we're a long way from having them. So proprietary parts are the reality now. There you go. And it's a good thing quads are so hard to get into, because if they weren't hard to get into, I wouldn't be able to do videos like this as my full-time job. That's right. If quads were easier, you wouldn't need me. Then where would I be? Walking around a hospital somewhere doing a Wi-Fi site survey, and I don't think any of us wants that. So thank you guys very much. Thank you to everybody who came out in the chat. Thanks to everybody who answered questions in the chat. Thanks to my patrons in the Discord. If you do want to join and participate in my Discord server, there's a link to my Patreon page down below. You can join there for as little as $2 a month. And thanks to everybody who gave in the super chats as well. That is going to do it for this live stream. If you would like to keep listening to this similar type of content from somebody much better looking than me, Aaron Ciotti is going to be streaming as soon as I get off the air. I've already gone over by a minute. Sorry, Aaron. Check him out. He's in the chat now. He's posting a link to his stream. Thank you guys so much. I will be back Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern will be my next live stream. I stream Sundays at 1 and Mondays at 8, and look for great content through the rest of the week on my channel. I'll be finishing up the Stinger Swarm forged carbon frame build, and then on Wednesday of this week, I think it is, maybe Thursday, I went down to Atlanta and I flew with Stingy. I told him, you do a trick and I will copy your trick, even if I crashed 1,000 times. That was my little way of testing the durability of the frame. So that's all coming out this week. That is it for now, though. Thank you guys so much. I am out of here. Happy flying, everybody. Have a good week.